At the core of our short time together is the human brain. And I gave you a little tip on that with the checkerboard test and pattern recognition. And what I said about my dad teaching me some patterns when I was a little kid growing up in Pennsylvania. And I want to give you maybe 60 seconds of neuroscience. And I usually say, because that's all I know about neuroscience. So I'll give you what I know about neuroscience. We have two parts of the brain that are always working. One works way more often than the other, and that's this one. The automatic brain. Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the book that we based all of our work on called Thinking Fast and Slow, calls it the fast brain. But we didn't want to confuse people and make them think that fast is better than slow. And we sometimes think of a fast thinker as better than a slow thinker. But in this case, it's the processing of data in our mind. Automatic pilot is what happens in the fast brain. The amygdala, the hippocampus. The amygdala is our danger detector that tells us that we probably should take a turn here instead of here when we're driving. It's a good thing to have the amygdala. And that's where all of those, we are farmers, bump and up and up and up. Nike, just do it. Things that have been repeated over and over again about black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, men and women, gay people, straight people, Christian people, Jewish people, Muslim people. All of those messages, plus thousands of more, live back in the automatic brain. And that's where stereotyping and pattern recognition kick into gear like we've been talking about today. Daniel Kahneman says our brain is using that 85% of our day, week, month. We're smart people at Southern Nuclear. We've seen it all. We've been trained. We've been doing the same job over and over again, maybe for a few years. So we're on automatic pilot frequently. And only 15 to 20% of the time do we move up to the deliberate brain, which is if the automatic brain is the revving engine of a car flooding with gas, the deliberate brain is the clutch. Now, if you're watching and you're younger than 40, let me tell you what a clutch is. I'm not going to do that, but we have some fun with that. You can think of the brake, but the clutch is what stops the gas from flooding into the engine and puts the engine on kind of quiet zone. And that's what this part of the brain, the preneofrontal cortex, does, is that it allows us to slow down and think deliberately, intentionally about a decision we're getting ready to make instead of it happening on automatic pilot. So if you have ever given the people in your life the privilege of saying, let me turn off my device, let me close the door, let me close this book, let me turn off the TV because I want to give you my undivided attention, that's happening here in this part of the brain. So if I were a manager, I'm not a people manager anymore, and that looks at resumes, knowing what I told you about Jose and about people making fast judgments on resumes, before I looked at resumes, I would close my eyes and use this part of the brain and say, their name, where they live, how old they are, should not enter into how I read this resume. I'm kind of falling back on the most basic thing that happens in business. People apply for jobs, and we look at their application, and we decide whether to interview them. That's something that the deliberate brain does. So we give tons of examples in our work of other ways, especially for managers and people who work on teams, to use techniques to be able to use this part of the brain to silence the part of the brain that's constantly using our biases as a way of making decisions. So this gets lazy, and when it gets lazy, and we're tired, and we're hungry, and we are multitasking, and we have had too much work on our plate, we often revert back to the automatic brain. So that's why this becomes, I call it going to the inclusion gym. It's horrible going to the gym for the first time or when you haven't been there for a long time. It's horrible. It doesn't feel good, but the more you keep doing it, the more confidence you get and the more strength you get. That's what has to happen with being a more inclusive person at Southern Nuclear.